She didn't leave because you weren't enough. She left because the warmth you offered felt foreign. You were peace, but her nervous system was trained for war, and in that sacred silence where you thought you lost her, what you really found was yourself. This isn't just a story of love, it's a story of memory, survival, and the ghosts we mistake for destiny. Freud saw it long before any dating app, that beneath every silence, every cold goodbye, every mixed signal that made your soul ache, is not a mystery. It's a map, not to her, but to you. And until you walk its terrain, you'll keep chasing reflections of a wound you never healed. This isn't about her. It never was. It's about who you become when you stop bleeding for ghosts. She doesn't run because she's careless. She runs because something ancient inside her remembers the cost of being still. To love without fear was never a lesson she learned. To trust without testing, never a luxury she knew. There is a war inside her, not loud, not visible, but thunderous in the silence between your last message and her refusal to reply. You think it's about you, but it isn't. It never was. She is not trying to confuse you. She is trying to survive herself. To make sense of the contradiction she has carried since girlhood. To desire power, but fear its grip. To crave surrender, but hate what it reveals. Freud saw it long before we gave it names like attachment style, emotional trauma, or toxic relationships. He saw a deeper structure beneath the surface. Not chaos, but a coded dance. A tension between her primal longing and the voice that tells her she's wrong for having it. At her core lives the id, that wordless, instinctual force that doesn't care about culture or correctness. It seeks strength. It seeks protection. It seeks the man who does not flinch when she unleashes her storm. Not to be controlled by him, but to find someone strong enough to meet her. And above it sits the superego, the voice of her upbringing, her religion, her mother's warnings, her father's absence. It shames that desire. It tells her to behave, to please, to never need too much. It wraps her longing in guilt and teaches her to hide the very thing she aches to feel. Between these forces sits the ego, trying to protect her from shame, trying to make her presentable, reasonable, likable, so she doesn't collapse under the weight of her own unspoken hunger. This war explains everything. Why she's magnetic and then withdrawn. Why she tells you everything and then punishes you for being close. Why she calls you too intense but can't stop watching you. She isn't playing games. She's managing contradictions she never chose. Because when a woman was taught that love makes her powerless, she will test you to see if you crumble. She will provoke you to see if you fold. She will push just to know. Will you lose yourself trying to hold her? She needs to know if the ground beneath her feet is real or just another illusion dressed as a man. And most men collapse under that weight. They explain, they chase, they apologize for their strength, not realizing that in their desperation to be chosen, they reveal they have no center. But the man who doesn't flinch, the man who meets her fire with stillness, her doubt with knowing, her fear with presence, he awakens something in her that was buried beneath layers of cultural dust. She begins to remember the part of her that once trusted the masculine, not because he pleased her, but because he saw her. That's the real war. She doesn't want dominance, she wants depth. She doesn't want control, she wants containment. She doesn't want to be fixed, she wants to be felt. When you try to rescue her, you make her fragile. When you argue with her chaos, you make her louder. But when you remain centered, unshaken, unoffended, unapologetically rooted in who you are, you give her something sacred. The experience of being in the presence of a man who does not need to prove anything. And that is terrifying to her wounds. Because if you're real, if your strength is not borrowed, if your silence is not weakness but sovereignty, then everything she was taught to fear might have been a lie. Understand this. When she pulls away, it's not rejection. It's a test of your nervous system. Not to see if you're dominant, but to see if you're home. Can you stay rooted when the wind of her past threatens to pull her away from herself? Can you remain still when she tries to provoke movement out of fear of losing control? Because the feminine doesn't trust words. She watches energy. She listens to your silence. She watches what you do when she disappears. You collapse, she knows she was right. No man can hold her. If you chase, she confirms her story. That love must always be earned. But if you stay grounded, if you neither chase nor abandon, if you simply are, she encounters something rare. A man who is not there to take or to fix or to be chosen, but to embody something she's never seen. A mirror that reflects not her wounds, but her wholeness. This is the war within her, and you cannot end it for her. You cannot win it. You can only stand still enough for her to hear her own heart through yours. And in that stillness, the war may not end, but for the first time, it won't be all she knows. She didn't vanish to hurt you. She vanished to protect herself, and not from you, but from the rising ache within her that she can no longer outrun. We are all shaped by the echoes of absence, not just what happened, but what didn't. There's a silence from her childhood that never stopped ringing, a room where she cried and no one came, a moment where she reached out and the world turned cold. That's where it began, not with you, but with the little girl who learned far too early that love was dangerous, and needing someone meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant pain. That girl still lives inside her, not as memory, but as reflex. When you touched her soul, you awakened not just desire, you awakened the ghosts, the longing, the grief, the aching fear of being seen too deeply and then left. She doesn't fear love. She fears what love cost her the last time. And so, her adult self does what her younger self had to do. Build walls and call them wisdom. Stay in control and call it strength. Run away and call it freedom. This is repression, not denial of truth, but burial. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. So when she disappears, when she turns cold, you interpret it as rejection. You think she lost interest, but interest was never the threat. Intimacy was. The closer you got, the louder her nervous system screamed. He's going to leave. He's going to forget you. He's going to see the mess you're hiding and walk away. And so she ran first, not because you failed, but because you touched something real. Understand this, you're not in a relationship with just the woman in front of you. You're in a relationship with her history, her unhealed, her unseen, her forgotten. And until she meets herself there, no man will ever feel safe to her. Not because he's dangerous, but because his love threatens her illusion of control. When love has always felt conditional, unconditional presence feels unbearable. She would rather sabotage something sacred than face the raw truth that she doesn't know how to receive it. You see her watching your stories. You feel her energy lingering in the unseen places. You hear the whispers of what could have been. But she will not return until she feels safe inside her own skin. Because no matter how kind you are, how present, how strong, she cannot let you in while she still carries the belief that closeness equals collapse. This is not your battle to win. It is hers to face. You want to write the perfect message. You want to prove you're different. You want to show her that not all men leave, that not all love hurts. But her body still carries evidence of when it did. And until that trauma is held by her, not by you, she cannot stand still in love without trembling. What you're witnessing is the defense of a wounded soul, a soul that was once too open, too trusting, too pure, and got burned. So she built a fortress of fire. She'll flirt with closeness, then scorch the bridge. She'll pull you near, then freeze at the door. She will not know why. She will blame you. But deep down, even she is confused by her reaction. You are not the cause. You are the mirror. And mirrors are terrifying when we are not ready to see ourselves. Here is the paradox. The more authentic you are, the more dangerous you feel to her unconscious. Because she was trained to expect coldness, and your warmth feels like walking into the sun without armor. She doesn't run because she hates you. She runs because, for a fleeting moment, you reminded her of what it feels like to be whole. And she doesn't trust herself with that feeling. You cannot fix this by being nicer, more patient, more understanding, because her wounds are not looking for a savior. They're looking for repetition. And unless she wakes up, she will unconsciously recreate the pain she's familiar with. She'll keep choosing the man who withdraws, the one who plays games, the one who mirrors her chaos instead of revealing her peace. Not because she wants suffering, but because it feels like home. And so, if you truly love her, let her go. Not in bitterness, not in anger, but in wisdom. Because real love does not beg to be received by a heart that cannot yet hold it. Real love sees the wound and chooses to no longer dance with it. You are not meant to be her therapist. You are not born to prove your worth to someone too guarded to see it. You are not here to bleed so she can learn to feel. You are here to remember yourself, to step back from the fire and tend to your own flame. Let her journey unfold without you, not because you are unworthy, but because you are finally free from the need to rescue what was never yours to carry. This is what spiritual strength looks like: the willingness to love without attachment, to care without control, to witness pain without making it your own. And when she one day awakens, not to you but to herself, she will understand that the man who walked away was the first man who truly saw her and didn't flinch. You think it's love. You feel it in your chest, in your bones, in the places logic has never touched. The flutter in your gut when she walks in, the ache when she pulls away, the obsession that grows in silence. You call that attraction. You call it chemistry. But what if it's something far older and far more dangerous? What if it's not her you're drawn to, but the ache she awakens? We do not fall for people. We fall for patterns, familiar energies that echo the first lessons we never questioned. A touch that reminds us of absence. A glance that echoes the rejection we've known since we were boys. And when she pulls away, when she goes cold, when she teases closeness and then retreats into shadows, something inside you ignites. Not from connection, but from lack. Your nervous system screams, don't lose this, prove yourself, fix it, win her back. But pause, breathe, and ask, who are you really trying to win? You see, this isn't about her. It's about a wound, an unmet need, a mother who gave affection like lightning, beautiful but unpredictable. A father who was there but never really present. A home where love felt like something you earned, not something you simply received. And now, decades later, here you are, still chasing the same cold, still trying to warm yourself by the fire of someone who cannot hold it for you, still calling it romance, when it's actually repetition. This is what Freud called displacement. When we redirect unhealed desires toward present objects, not because they are right, but because they feel familiar. You're not in love with her. You're in love with the hope that if you can finally win her, you will prove to the child within you that he was never unworthy to begin with. But here's the paradox. The more she withdraws, the more your hunger grows, not because she is more valuable, but because your brain has confused scarcity with worth. You mistake the ache for intimacy. You mistake the chase for love. You mistake the anxiety for chemistry. But anxiety is not attraction. It's alarm. It's the body remembering what danger felt like and mistaking it for desire. She may smile just the right way. Her energy may mirror your fantasy. She may ignite something raw in you. But that ignition is not truth, it's a trigger. She doesn't need to say a word. Her absence becomes a mirror, reflecting every moment you felt invisible, every time you had to earn love through performance, every time silence felt like punishment. You're not trying to love her. You're trying to fix something ancient. You're trying to rewrite the ending of a story that never got closure. But you cannot rewrite the past by chasing someone in the present who mirrors the wound. You only deepen the illusion. Attraction without awareness is bondage. You keep calling her the one, when really she's just the most recent avatar of a wound that has worn many faces. You crave her validation, because her rejection reactivates your origin story. If I can just be enough for her, I will finally be enough for me. But that math has never worked, and it never will, because your value was never meant to be measured by someone who cannot even see themselves clearly. She might be captivating, she might be beautiful, radiant, magnetic, but so is fire, until you realize you've been burning for years and calling it light. It's time to ask yourself, what would attraction feel like if you were already whole? What would love look like if it wasn't laced with the need to prove anything? What if she didn't feel like home, because home as you knew it was never safe? You see, many confuse emotional familiarity with emotional truth. But what's familiar isn't always what's right. Sometimes it's just what's repeated. This is how the illusion is maintained, through the false belief that suffering is romantic, that chaos is a sign of depth, that longing is a measure of love. But love does not ask you to shrink. It does not trigger your trauma and call it destiny. Love is not pain dressed in poetry. Love is peace you don't have to earn. Love is presence that doesn't punish. Love is a mirror that reflects your wholeness, not the parts of you still waiting to be rescued. So if you feel addicted to her energy, if you can't let go, if her silence hurts more than her words ever did, ask yourself, is this love? Or is this your shadow wearing perfume? You do not heal by being chosen. You heal by choosing yourself and walking away from every version of love that looks like abandonment wearing lipstick. Let go of the one who awakens your ache and find the one who awakens your peace. Not because it's easier, but because it's true. Because the real love you seek will never come wrapped in anxiety. It will come in stillness, in clarity, in recognition. You will not chase it. You will not suffer for it. You will stand in it, and it will not ask you to lose yourself to be seen. She pulled away, and you ran after her. She went silent, and you filled the space with apologies, explanations, proofs of your worth. You thought if you just loved her louder, she'd stop running. But love is not volume, and your need to convince her became the very reason she lost respect. This is the masculine mistake, not weakness, but forgetting who you are the moment she forgets how to see you. We are taught from a young age to perform for love. Smile when we're sad, win to be seen, fix to be needed. So when a woman turns cold, that script gets triggered, and the boy inside you begins to beg. He doesn't beg with words, he begs with over-explaining, with long texts, with bending of boundaries, with trying to be the perfect man for a woman who doesn't even know what she wants. But the truth is, you were never rejected. You simply gave your power to someone who didn't know how to hold it. The masculine mistake is forgetting that your presence is the gift, not something to barter, not something to dilute, not something to beg with, but something to offer freely and walk away from just as freely when it's not met with truth. Masculinity is not dominance. It is discernment. It is the wisdom to know the difference between being tested and being used. You keep thinking if you're soft enough, kind enough, patient enough, she'll finally see you. But what if she already does? What if she sees your light and doesn't believe she deserves it, and instead of sitting with that unworthiness, she blames you for making her feel it, so she pushes, sabotages, withdraws, not because you failed, but because your love brings up a mirror she's not ready to look into. And here's where most men collapse. They personalize the chaos. They try to solve her inner war by becoming less themselves. They shrink, submit, and surrender, not from power, but from fear. And the more you abandon yourself in hopes of keeping her, the more she loses respect. Because she doesn't want a man who pleases. She wants a man who knows. A man who knows his voice even when she shouts over it. A man who knows his path even when she tries to rewrite the map. A man who doesn't chase chaos because he is building a kingdom inside. This isn't about being cold, it's about being clear. Because the moment you try to fix her wound, you become responsible for pain you didn't create. And the moment you start defending yourself against projections, you enter a theater that was never yours to perform in. She accuses you of being too much, then too little, too strong, then too passive, too mysterious, then too obvious. And so you contort, not realizing that every compromise to your truth is another nail in the coffin of the relationship. Because no woman can truly surrender to a man who has abandoned himself. She may enjoy the control for a while, but deep down, her soul will ache for the man who holds his frame without asking for permission. But the more she fucks with you, the more she fucks with it for a while, but deep down, her soul will ache for the man who holds his frame without asking for permission. This is not about punishing her. It's about protecting your presence. You are not her father, not her therapist, not her emotional punching bag. You are a mirror. And mirrors don't chase the ones who turn away. They simply reflect. And if she runs from your stillness, that is her lesson to walk through, not yours to interrupt. Because the masculine doesn't rescue. It remembers. It remembers who it is, even when the feminine forgets who she is. You think strength is holding on, but sometimes strength is in the release, the quiet exit, the gentle but unshakable no. Not because you're hurt, but because you finally love yourself more than her confusion. The greatest mistake a man can make is giving his peace away for the promise of affection. Because affection gained through self-abandonment will always taste like ashes. You don't win her by being everything. You win her by being true. And if that truth makes her leave, let her go. Let her walk. Let her choose the patterns she's not ready to break. Because your power was never meant to be used as bait for someone still negotiating with their fear. She may come back. She may not. But that is not the point. The point is this: you remembered who you are, and you stopped performing. You stopped proving. You stopped trying to be enough for someone who doesn't even feel enough within herself. And in that stillness, that sacred return to your own center, you become what she secretly longed for all along. A man who does not need to be chosen to know his worth. This is the masculine healed, not loud, not demanding, but immovable. A man who no longer runs toward what feels familiar, but rises into what feels true. And that man cannot be manipulated, because he no longer plays in someone else's story. He writes his own. You thought it was her voice, her laugh, the way her presence wrapped around your loneliness like silk. You believed you loved her. But what you loved was the feeling she stirred. That sudden sacred awakening, that flicker of worthiness, that brief moment where everything broken inside you felt seen, felt chosen, felt enough. But now you see the truth. She was never the destination. She was the mirror, and what she reflected was not your future, but your wound. This is the hardest truth for a man to hold. That what he chased was not a woman, but a memory wrapped in flesh, a longing that had worn many faces before hers, but always whispered the same haunting script. If I can get her to love me, then maybe, just maybe, I will finally be whole. You weren't in love, you were in longing, not drawn to her essence, but addicted to the familiar ache she unknowingly activated. This is what Freud understood, that the unconscious repeats what was never resolved. That we are pulled back again and again into the arms of those who mirror the first heartbreak we couldn't name. And so, you mistook her inconsistency for mystery, her silence for depth, her withdrawal for complexity. But it wasn't her presence that intoxicated you. It was the scarcity. It was the dance of almost, the illusion of arrival, the shadow of something you hoped would finally redeem the boy inside who was never fully held. And that's where the pain lives. Not in her leaving, but in realizing you had made her your salvation. You believed that if you could just be enough for her, you would erase the unworthiness that had lived in you like a quiet ghost. But ghosts don't die through romance. They die through remembrance. And here is what you now remember. She was not your home. She was a house built out of your projections, a story stitched from pain, a mirror reflecting your deepest, most forgotten hunger. You wanted her to see you, but what you really wanted was to see yourself through her eyes. This is the final masculine mistake, handing your reflection to someone else and hoping they hold it with care. But how could she? She wasn't holding you, she was holding herself. Barely. You thought she was rare, that no one had made you feel this way. But the truth is, you had felt it before, in places where love was withheld, in the spaces between your father's silence and your mother's disappointment. She felt special not because she was your soulmate, but because she triggered your earliest stories of trying to matter. And now that the illusion has shattered, you feel broken. But this breaking is sacred, because in that fracture, you find something untouched by her leaving, your own becoming. You no longer chase women who echo your wounds. You no longer confuse chaos with connection. You no longer need to prove your worth inside someone else's storm. You understand now, she wasn't rejecting you. She was running from what you reflected. A love too real, a presence too stable, a truth she had no language for. Because some women don't want love. They want the performance of it, the illusion, the drama, the validation. Not because they are cruel, but because authenticity terrifies those who haven't met their own. And your presence became unbearable, not because you were wrong, but because you were clear. And so she projected. She shamed you, criticized you, called you cold, distant, arrogant. But those words weren't yours to carry. They were her own disowned truths. The parts of her that longed for containment, but had only ever known control. You tried to hold space for her healing, but you cannot hold space for someone who's still hiding from themselves. You became her battlefield, and then blamed yourself for the war. But now, you step out of the arena, not with resentment, but with revelation. She was never yours to fix, never yours to save. She was only yours to witness and let go. This is how the masculine heals, not through conquest, but through clarity, through no longer placing his sense of self into the hands of a woman who cannot even hold her own reflection. You no longer need her to understand. You no longer need an apology or a text or a moment of closure, because closure is not a conversation. Closure is truth, and the truth is, you were always enough. You were always the storm and the shelter, the fire and the foundation. You simply forgot in the mirror of someone who never saw themselves clearly enough to see you. So now, you walk away, not as punishment, but as prophecy, because you are no longer a man who chases ghosts. You are a man who walks with God, who builds from stillness, who attracts not what triggers his wounds, but what reflects his healing. She was not the lesson, she was the awakening, and now the illusion ends, and the truth begins. There comes a moment on every man's path, a moment not of conquest, but of remembrance, a moment when he no longer seeks to possess the woman, but to unite with something far more eternal, himself. She was the mirror. She was the lesson. She was the storm that cracked open the shell of who you thought you were, so you could discover the stillness of who you've always been. And now, that journey leads you to a place no map can draw, a place beyond body, beyond name, beyond attachment, a place where union is no longer about holding her, but becoming whole within you. This is the sacred reunion, not between man and woman, but between the masculine and the divine. You see, the world told you that love was a chase, a negotiation, a performance. But the soul knows otherwise. The soul remembers that love is not found in form. It is found in frequency. It is not in her lips or her absence or her sudden return. It is in your resonance with truth. Because the true feminine, the healed feminine, is not a storm to be tamed. She is the wind that blesses the sails of the man who knows where he's going. She is not your direction. She is the sacred breath that arrives once you've chosen your path. And you are no longer the boy waiting to be chosen. You are the man who chooses himself again and again, not from ego, but from knowing. Because you've learned the most ancient secret, that no woman can ever give you what you haven't first offered yourself: respect, peace, purpose, presence. You once thought power was in persuasion, but now you see power is in stillness, in restraint, in building something so rooted that no feminine chaos can shake it. And in that groundedness, you call forth a different kind of woman. Not one who tests you, not one who projects her fear onto your strength, but one who has met herself, faced her own shadows, and now comes not to complete you, but to consecrate you. Because real union is not built on craving. It is built on clarity. Two sovereign souls, two healed nervous systems, two flames not seeking to merge into one, but to burn brighter together, without needing to control the fire. This is union beyond form, where she no longer fills your void, because there is no void left to fill, where you no longer perform your masculinity, because it now speaks without sound. This is not about romance, this is about resonance, the vibration of truth, the hum of peace in your chest that no drama can disturb. And when she meets you here, in this rare, unshakable stillness, she won't just love you. She'll trust you, because she will feel what every awakened feminine longs for: a man who doesn't need her to be whole, but who welcomes her from his wholeness. You'll feel the difference. There will be no anxiety, no guessing games, no manipulation dressed as mystery. Just presence, just breath, just truth. And if she cannot meet you here, you remain unmoved, not because you are cold, but because your warmth is sacred now. It is not for negotiation, it is not for testing, it is reserved for the woman who brings her own flame, not to consume yours, but to dance beside it. And until that day, you walk, not in loneliness, but in purpose, not in bitterness, but in beauty, because you finally understand she was never the destination, she was the door. And you, brother, you walked through. If this journey spoke to something unspoken inside you, a quiet knowing that you've carried your whole life but never had words for, then you already know this isn't just content, it's initiation. You've been reminded, not just of her patterns, but of your power, not just of her projection, but of your potential. Now it's time to live it, to embody it, to walk as the man who no longer needs to chase, fix, or prove, because his truth is carved into his presence. If you're walking this path of remembering, subscribe to this space, not for information, but for transformation. Comment below with a line, a feeling, or a realization that stayed with you, because your voice may be the mirror another brother needs. And share this with someone still bleeding for mirrors. He deserves to remember who he is too. This is Inner Alchemy, where men do not run from chaos, they transcend it. Where we don't chase love, we become it. And we do not beg to be seen, we see ourselves first. Until next time, walk with stillness, speak with fire, and remember, you are not here to be understood by confusion. You are here to be unshakable in truth. Welcome home.